Welcome to another exciting episode of Humanity 8.0, a podcast where we talk about movements and initiatives that seek to move humanity to its next epochal iteration. This podcast is brought to you by Witlingo. When it comes to managing a community, one of the keys to success is the ability to effectively communicate with the members of that community. If you are a service coordinator or responsible for community engagement, Witlingo provides a multi-channel, multilingual notification and engagement platform to help you work more efficiently and effectively. For more information, please visit www.witlingo.com. That's www.witlingo.com. And now, here's your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid.
My point really is, my question is the following. In the case of WikiLeaks, where we have a whole bunch of documents that reveal things that were hidden from us, and we couldn't. We have it, and yet we haven't done much with it. We haven't changed. We haven't even repealed the Patriot Act, which we should.
Yes.
We have not, right? So my question to you is: assume that somehow, because of your great work, right, we managed to get the data that we want to get, and then what? And then what? What's going to happen? Well, how do you think that will change things? And I ask not because I doubt, because I'm against, because I'm for open transparency.
Yeah.
My question to you is, what's the mechanism, and how will it go from the information is here, look at all the corruption, to reform?
So
what can happen?
With
What is needed?
as a again, data engineer's job is to move the data and get it ready for other people to do analysis on it. And one of the biggest challenges with the government, the GSA is dealing with this right now, is the data are not standardized. So right now, okay, take the WikiLeaks emails, take any information that's put out there, and let's say we dumped all this stuff publicly. The big problem now is, especially with a lot of the data, even though it's split over multiple places, is it's all different. It's different formats, different schemas, and what it requires in order to make use of it, you have to have thing called data nerd here, but an ETL, extract transform load pipeline, where basically you take data from one place,
that's a technology,
but you can't analyze it.
Yeah, that's a technology issue, and as you well know, because you're a technologist, right?
Yeah.
That's the least. That is solvable. It will be solved.
It's solvable, but it's not as. It's all one-off. So right now, when something,
I'm sorry. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying basically, the way I see it, if we dumped all this information and people could use it, okay, we know what it is now. We know what kind of format it is, and we can set up those analysis, and you can just, you can drop it into a massive Postgre, database, and you can do your analysis of it. But now, number one, there's an initial lift with these projects and these things, and right now, you have to go one-off and build all of this, like take House Ethics Committee, financial, disclosures. That data right there, it's out there, and we know what type it is, but there's not a really great way to automate that. And I think, but to the core of your question, like making everything public, first off, I don't know what I don't know, but I also have a lot of faith in the internet. The internet, like especially if you look at open source software, people will figure it out. And I think when everything is public and open, and the government has to make the case to keep a record secret, as opposed to if they should disclose it. There are great groups out there, like Sunlight. My instant transparency app is called Sunbeam. I named it after the Sunlight Foundation. And it's kind of like life will find a way from Jurassic Park. The internet will find a way. And I think when all of this data comes out, especially with the incredible advancements in AI just over the past 12 months, I think when all of this stuff becomes public and is out and open, and people can actually dig down, and people who are passionate about these different issues, I'm not unique in the fact that I ran for Congress because I want to make a difference. Like, I feel that a lot of people, I was on a call with Sun, oh my gosh, I am drawing a blank on them. It's a youth group for environmental change. I want to say Sunlight, uh, Sunrise, and they are very big on the environment. And I was shocked at 8:30 at night. There were 21, 22 people on this Zoom call, and they stayed for an hour and engaged to talk about the environment. And I was blown away at how passionate they were. So I think when all of this stuff goes public and is live, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know what the future holds. But I think if we give people the choice to go through it, and which they do. I mean, there's a reason that when WikiLeaks data was released, even though the media didn't report a lot on it, you know about it, I know about it, and other people still, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best way to disseminate it, but at the same time, it does exist, and I think people who
Yeah,
are passionate are going to find it.
What doesn't baffle me, because I think I know what's going on, is that the New York Times could have two or three folks go dig into WikiLeaks and write a whole bunch of stories. They have a lot of money, those folks. So, and they will plow through it. It's not ideal. It's not uniform. They can look at PDFs. They can look at whatever. They can look at, and then they could write story after story after story that would basically just chip away at this notion that the United States of America is here to do good, as opposed to the United States of America is here to serve, my theory is it serves a war machine, right? You have Lockheed Martin, all that, they need to maintain their income and so forth. So the United States is always in a war. And so for me, one could write that story, but that story just goes completely against the narrative of the United States are the good guys, right? And I see that, for me, that is the biggest obstacle. Technology, I'm a big believer in, we technologists, we can solve any problem, just leave us alone, we'll take care of it. We'll figure it out. There's no problem that has not been solved by technology, but the political and the paradigm and the journalists and all that,
Oh,
it feels to me that is the hurdle, even for information that is available, readily available, they stay away from it because it doesn't fit with the narrative. So, what do you
if,
think about that?
well, I mean, I've said this, and it's um, terrifying, but also a little depressing, but also really exciting. Whenever, like, my policies, I'm very detailed in my issue page. Not everything's published yet because I put a lot of time and effort on the issue pages on my website. But if elected, my agenda will not have a snowball's chance in hell of getting implemented without public support. Because I've already been in contact with a company called Plaid for like those congressional finance reports. I don't think that Congress should have to manually input that. I think, okay, congratulations, you won Congress. Sign in with your bank account and sign into your Charles Schwab account so that your financial transactions are published instantly as opposed to later. These kind of things, there's a lot of people, elected officials in particular, who are not interested in connecting their bank account balance, which is already required by law to close your balance. They don't want to. I mean, the Speaker of the House technically doesn't have a bank account, which is a lie, but there's no way to verify that. These kind of changes and implementations, and I'm voluntarily, I am instantly disclosing all of my campaign finance contributions. I have confirmed with the FEC that's not against the law. And it is perfectly acceptable. But like you said, the media is more interested in saying that I'm a long shot candidate than actually saying, wow, literally no one's done this. And he's solved or potentially solved like a huge problem in our country without even being in office. And the only way if elected, like my agenda will have any chance of happening is public support. And I think a lot of that goes back to, social. I think one of the reasons that they banned TikTok is because you're able to really, the great algorithm in the sky just push it. But for me, the only way I think a lot of these things are going to get out there is, one, you have to have your leaders communicating with the people that they're leading, the constituents. They have to be informed. They have to know what's going on, and you have to do it in a way that they can absorb it. If you post something on Facebook, I will not see it. I do not like Facebook. I do not like Meta. I don't. I have a lot of issues. But if you post a message on, I'm not going to see it. And I think with a lot of this, it goes down to one, like to get a data privacy bill, you can sure bet that a lot of lobbyists are going to want, I'm not going to be on the Christmas list.
Yeah.
But the only way, but if you have the American people demanding this, it's going to happen. The only way that things like this truly change is if people get fired up and burn down the phone lines of the U.S. House of Representatives. So for me, a big part of why I'm open and I'm transparent and I want, you've been on email chains with me, like I am transparent to a fault in some cases, and is like if elected, everyone should know everything. And like unless it's constituent info or stuff that's like classified, like it will be public. Like, henselva8.slack.gov or slackgov.com, whatever it is, that will be open and public for people to view, unless the private channel. Like that's the level. And I think people, they need to know what's going on. And I think without that, you're going to get into a place now where you're making a lot. I feel like they're making decisions without. I feel like their ulterior motives are just hidden.
Yeah.
But again, it's a whole. Again, my whole. As you notice, my
No,
whole.
I think that's the only way to move forward is to hope for things that now seem to be, almost impossible. That's how change happens. And for me, the media seems to be a buffer, or some kind of a protective layer around the
Absolutely.
establishment as opposed to what it's supposed to do. I mean, it's the only profession, if you think about it, that is protected by the Bill of Rights, right? And the First Amendment, right? The reason why that's the case is because their job one, should be to go and poke at the powerful, whether private or public, and expose fraud. That's the function of, to your point,
Yes.
transparency. That's their function, not telling us stories, not telling us officials said. I mean, if you look at the New York Times, they are telling us what officials said. Why is that your job to tell me what the officials said, as opposed to go and expose something bad? Go sniff out. There's a whole bunch of bad stuff.
Again, I can't remember who said this initially, but it's like the phrase like they've got the mortgage, and a lot of these media companies, they have. I mean, Washington Post, they're owned by Bezos,
Yeah.
and while their editorial board and all that, like I admire they do some great reporting. They knock Amazon every once in a while, but a lot of these, but there's not that many media companies in this country. Like really, they're all owned by a
Yeah.
company. They're all owned by all system. And
It was Clinton who consolidated like into, because of some,
and
6 companies. It used to be a whole lot more than that.
there's a lot of reporters out there who are passionate, who do, they burn the shoe leather to go find these stories. But the problem is that it doesn't always necessarily. I mean, a big part of that is also, I think that some big, there's not the funding model shift, obviously, like with the internet becoming a thing, print isn't it quite as where it was, and then Google is awful with regards to like compensating for that. And I think a big problem with journalism is you have to write for the majority that most people are going to read. You have to write, clickbait in most cases, because like people are just going to read the title and look at the cover photo, and that's going to determine if you're going to make any money.
Yeah.
And I think, things like, which I know they're not 100% and things, but like PBS and NPR and things like that, I think are critical in that they form like a baseline. But also, I think when it comes to journalism and reporting, we needed to make it easier for small groups who, your local newspaper used to be like, they used to be digging into all the things. They used to be like your local news and reporter. Now it's just, a hash of whatever happened. You're like part of your state. That's all,
Yeah, I mean, right now it's basically nothing. Nothing is going on.
Yeah, it's nothing of note.
iPhone.
And
Yeah.
I think a big reason for that, number one, is conglomeration, which
Yeah,
if you haven't, I haven't published just like on there officially, but if you've read my policies, I'm not really a fan of monopolies.
yeah, yeah.
And one, you got to break them up, because, and also I think there's also a ethical question of, which again, this is not really any party because it's so extreme. No one really does. I'm like, is there an ethical question of media companies being publicly traded? Because when you're more focused on the end of quarter
That's
earnings,
right. Yeah.
I'm
And
not
even if
saying
you,
like you should make them all public, but like
yeah,
from a
yeah.
like if you're publicly traded as a media organization, are you worried about the people or your shareholders? And
Yeah, we're in it. It's very simple. They're worried about their shareholders, period.
the stock price. And I think when you have that,
That's it.
um, I'm not saying that publicly traded media companies are all bad, but at the same time,
It's a fundamental problem, though, right? I mean,
fundamental problem. And I think you, again, going back to transparency, you got to know what is your motive behind this article. If you are I mean, on a very basic sense, if, let's say I was dating a reporter who's writing about Northern Virginia politics. She can't write about Northern Virginia politics if I'm not doing what I'm doing. But if
that's
she
right.
didn't
Yep.
post that, and
Yep. Yeah.
so yeah, but again, it's a bigger problem, but I think it also goes back to, I think as a country, um, we we haven't really had, we've kind of been, shoveled this, you know, couple media companies shoveling their stuff down our throat, and we haven't really had a
Well,
bunch of other
the good
options.
news, I think the good news is if you look at the trend, right, is um like these legacy, and we'll call them legacy companies, New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, right? They're not being read by youngsters, right?
No.
Youngsters are getting their news and so forth from
Well,
these hubs of either grassroots, right? You can see a reporting from the Middle East directly. You don't need the New York Times to filter all that out, right? You can see, and also there are like Glenn Greenwald. There's a whole bunch of these folks who are they get their money directly from their channels, right? From the the viewers and so on, and Patreon and all that. So that I think there is hope there. My hope on top of that hope is that these monopolies who are, because they have to be on a platform, they have to be on YouTube, they have to be right. Those guys, they are now the gatekeepers, and anybody who deviates from the narrative, they get demonetized, right? You cannot say things like, I doubt, the effectiveness of the vaccine. If you say that in YouTube, automatically the algorithm is going to demonetize you. And so you have this censorship that's happening. And again, we go back to the information is there, the intelligence is there, people want to know, and yet there is this protective layer of the narrative and establishment that keeps on. And so there's this struggle, I think, that we're going through right now. The good news, again, there is people are the people who take CNN and all that seriously are dying off, thankfully, right? And people who don't watch them, right? They're getting their, from various sources, which is what we want. We want various sources, I think, right? So for me, that is a hopeful prospect. What do you think?
it's so I'm a huge fan of TikTok, and one of the I will push back on that a little bit with, and I say that because of the Washington Post. TikTok Dave from the Washington Post is the Washington Post TikTok guy, and um, Sam and Pam are his cans of spam. That they do a great job telling the news. They came out, in 2020, and also, under the desk news. And it's this reporter who literally gives reports from under the desk, and they like that reporter is phenomenal in what they do. And there's a few others on there that like and this is just a platform that I spend my time on. They do some great reporting. And the News Girl, I think, is another one. And they, like you said, YouTube and a few others, but they are pretty powerful. And I think these are the kind of platforms where people can share information and do it in such a way that rightfully so they can get compensated. I feel like that's what Medium used to be before it became
Yeah,
so locked down.
yeah, yeah,
And then, you know, platforms like that, it changes over time, and you have to just be dynamic and meet people where they are. I like to think of that. I know it's not the classical sense, but I call it data accessibility. You have to meet people where they are and make that stuff consumable. And I think the media landscape, it's kind of like, you know, not to be like, you know, weaving a sales pitch here, but I'm like, I feel that the media landscape of this country is pretty much like the American story. It's like ever changing. It's very dynamic. And if you just stand still and do the same thing over and over again, you're going to fall behind.
yeah.
And I feel that things like, like take Twitch, you know, people will just throw up a live stream and have a chat like this call I did with, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the name, Sunrise, I think is what the group is, the environmental group. In the Zoom call they had, you know, drop in the chat how this is making you feel. Like, what do you think about this being said on this call? And it was active. People were responding in the Zoom chat. And this is just Zoom. It's, you
No,
know,
I have the thing is that's why I'm hopeful. There is no doubt in my mind that people are alive in their minds and in their
yeah,
curiosity about what's happening. They are. The big problem right now is how do we translate all that bubbling energy, all of that good, criticism and
yeah.
whatever into legislation, into action, into, for
Well,
example, the assault weapon legislation. Why don't we have one? There's like 70% consensus across the board. Even Republicans want to introduce some laws that sort of make sense, and yet there's no translation. Sort of that is the frustrating. But I'm hopeful,
we have
fingers
bad leaders. They
yeah,
don't listen.
because they
If
don't have
I mean,
to.
to put it bluntly, I mean,
They don't
the
have to
biggest
listen.
problem, they're incompetent. They are
But
not.
the thing is, they don't have to listen because of like Don Buyer. Why does he need to listen? He has the war
He
chest.
doesn't.
He has the
Don
deal,
Beyer, his
and so he does
strategy,
whatever he wants.
if he went in and he, you know, we talked at the forum about he's hiking the Appalachian Trail in pieces, and I'm out of the Pacific Crest Trail. If he wanted to just dip out and go hike the Appalachian Trail, throw his phone in a lake and hide, that would be the best thing possible for his campaign right now. And when
That's what he's
again,
doing.
I'm running to represent the people of Northern Virginia, but I'm going to knock them a little bit here.
He should.
Um, we've got until the American people have to pay more attention to things. The presidency is beyond incredibly important, but that is not everything. It doesn't, I feel that we've seen, oh, we have to, we don't have a supermajority. We don't have this. We don't have that. So we can't get anything done. Well, they've been saying that for 20 years.
Or more than that,
More
forever.
than that, yeah. Again, I'm only 32, so my
No,
perspective.
I'm telling you that every single election has, even when it was Clinton against Dole, right? Which is like, what? Oh, this is the most consequential election
But
ever. The war is gonna go on fire if we go this way versus that way. But no, like to your point, which is there's a lot happening,
there's a lot going on, and people have to. Again, vote blue no matter what. Okay, great. If Don Beyer goes back in, you're not going to see anything. If you're, people they vote like take Northern Virginia. If they vote blue in November for the U.S. House, they're going to continue to see the exact same thing. Congress will not change. He said at this Fed forum he has, he has a bunch of Republican friends, but he hasn't had any bipartisan bills he's introduced, really. I mean, he's done a few, but nothing like of consequence. He just put forward a bill that all it's going to do if it gets out of committee is raise a bunch of money for the NRA.
there's a
Uh,
lot of posturing. A lot.
yeah, political posture. People are more
Yeah,
interested in political points.
that's it.
And
Supporting points.
if,
Yeah.
yes, that's necessarily good if you want the big partisan support stuff, but if you actually want to solve problems, like I like to say, I'm a, I'll sit with the Democrats at lunch, but I do know how to speak Republican. And I think as a nation, I feel that it's getting better. People are more open to different parties because the Democrat and Republican parties have been,
I think your generation, I think the young folks,
the bar is on the floor. So all we can
yeah,
do is go up. Any small improvement
Yeah.
is an improvement than what
No,
we've
absolutely.
got.
Now let's end on this note, which is a fun note. That is, we have invited, meaning you, and I'm involved in a sense because I'm
Yeah,
also constituent, so I'm involved in helping out in any way I can as a citizen who is concerned. We are trying to get Don Bayer, who's refusing to show up to these to debates, to show up to a debate, right? And we're trying to be creative. We're technologists.
yeah.
So if he doesn't show up, so we're saying if you don't show up, there will be your avatar that was fed by all the statements from the past. And it will be an AI, and we'll call it,
Bachar GPT will be rolling and giving those answers in the debate, Mr.
and it
Bach.
will be probably as faithful as if he were there.
Yep. And
Um, and
the
so
code
for
will be
me,
open.
it's not only is it fun, but it's doing something like that is interesting because it attracts. It's the playing the media game. The media needs a hook.
Oh
They would
yeah.
have, they don't care about the issues. They care about a hook. So when I reached out to my network and said, hey, we're thinking about doing that, I got like a couple of big names wanting to cover this thing, right? And I always go back to the media. How can we play this game of the media, right? Understanding their flaws and all that to further our mission being inclusiveness, being dialogue, right? And just knowing how to play that game, I think.
Yeah.
I hope, I wish these activists and these people who are running for Congress would play that game, would understand the media, would understand that, hey, maybe they won't cover it because if you frame it this way, but they would cover it if you frame it that way, right? I think right now, especially that this guy, Don Bayer, he passed. He tried. No, he didn't pass. He postured. That's called postured legislation to promote more candidates running for Congress. Literally, he did that. And here he is doing the exact opposite in his actions. So in
Oh
his
yeah.
in his words, right, he wanted to pass a legislation to promote diversity in what do you call it, in running for Congress. And indeed, he doesn't even want to show up to a debate.
Case in point. Just because I'm gonna knock on Ted Cruz here a little bit, but in 20, I believe it was 2018 was when he ran for re-election last. Ted Cruz put forward a term limits bill. Before 2018, he put together the bill, but there was an exemption
Huh?
for people currently in office. They would not abide by term limits. They'd have like an unlimited, there was no cap for currently elected officials. After he won his re-election,
Uh-huh.
then he put forward another bill, that removed that exemption. But Ted Cruz said, "Oh yeah, I support term limits. I did this bill." And but if you look at what he did, it was like,
Yeah, come on,
really?
man.
And it's again like misfire. He
Yeah.
while he's admirable and he's kind of, I like to think of, a nice goofy grandfather, um, he loves being in Congress. And I feel that if I was 65 and had 100, 75 now almost, had 100 million in the bank, I would be enjoying my life and enjoying, again, if I'm called to serve at that age, that's what the people want. That's what people want. But at the same time, I think, you know, focusing on yourself too is important. And I feel that
Well, I mean,
he's in
for him,
there and he's safe and he can say and do whatever he wants. And
yeah, and
unless
for him, that's how he's enjoying his life. So it's about him and his enjoyment as opposed to, I mean, if he were really a responsible person, he would say, I need to get young people here. I need to move off,
Congress should be
right?
like,
If he
going
were
and
really,
working in the United States House of Representatives, that does not sound,
yeah.
is not a fun job. I mean, yeah, you'll do some interesting things
But
and
he
like,
gets to meet, he gets to have power, he has to
I-
meet, he has to travel, he
I'm
gets,
not like, if I win, like, I'm going to be really sad about leaving my current job,
oh yeah, because
but
because
it's
you're
not
not an
something.
egomaniac. That's
I
why.
said this if I win, I will stay in office no more than 4 terms. Absolutely no more. And that's, I would like 3. And after 3 or 4 terms, the max hard set for is I'm either going up or out. After that, I'm either going House,
Yeah.
I'm either going to the Senate, going to Richmond, or I don't know, think about that, the White House. But I'm either going up or out after those terms. And I feel that, Congress needs to get in there, get their ideas. And if you can't get it done in a few years, then
But not
maybe
everybody's talented. You know, some people that's as much
there's
as
other. I am not the most talented person in Northern Virginia. There are people a lot smarter than I am, and I think that that's one of the reasons I was like, there has to be someone better. There has to be someone
well,
that's
better. What does that mean, right? Better in what sense? I mean, it has to be
well,
a combination of all kinds of attributes, right? As opposed to
Mr.
they are a good
Byers is
lawyer or
not
what is that?
admirable. I mean, admirable what he's doing, but not like the fact that he's a leader on AI.
Who's the
That's
leader on that guy?
like that is like he's got a lot of credit because he's taking a course on machine learning. And I mean, any technologist will tell you machine learning is not AI. And I feel that
It's just posturing, as
it's
you
posturing. It's
all
people
of it.
saying something to get points, but not actually doing it.
What is he gonna do with that? Whatever he learned, what is he gonna do with that? I mean, what?
Well, I mean, machine learning, like that's more of like the math side of it. I mean, I'm an engineer. That's not I mean, okay, admirable, but that's not how you're gonna learn about
It's not.
AI.
By the way, it's not that glorious. Machine learning. It's
No,
pretty.
it's not. We've had that for a long. It's not that impressive.
Not
Like,
at all. You know, I mean, it's the last thing I would like to do is machine learning. It's so messy and all that and all that and all that. Anyway,
no,
it's good that he's. But the thing is, he's a politician. Let's not forget. So
but also it's his
of
mindset.
optics. Yeah.
Going back, like I was on a podcast yesterday. It's called the Degree Free one because I'm 30. I'm a senior data and DevOps engineer and pretty good at my job. But I never finished. I never graduated. It just was not the way my life turned out. It was just not something I was able to finish up. And it's given me a really unique perspective and allowed me to really
Dig
broaden
into.
my horizon, find a box. And Mr. Byers' generation is the same as my dad. My dad are the same age. My dad's taking up beekeeping and he's going to some remote, like it's in the like out western, like Montana, I think, or one of those schools has a beekeeping master's class, and he's taking it, and that's where he sees how he's going. He goes back to school. My generation goes to
Yeah.
YouTube or Google to learn a
Yeah.
new skill,
That's
and
right. You're always learning every single day, every single
yeah,
hour. You know,
and
it's there, right?
if you want to learn AI, you don't go. I don't think if anyone says they are teaching a course on AI in university, that's not up to date. So if you want to go, you want to
I
go and
mean,
learn.
whatever curriculum they started with, you know, is probably outdated by the time the class is done. You
Yeah.
know, that's how
Oh yeah,
fast the
go and
thing.
spin something up, break it. Like again, I'm a DevOps engineer. Like,
Yeah.
you want me to learn your code? Let me spin it up and absolutely wreck it. Let me figure
Yeah.
out what causes that thing to break.
Yeah.
That's how I learn. But I feel that that's also just a cultural difference. That generation just is more, they don't
Yeah.
they don't think of YouTube class or going to they don't understand asking a question on Stack Exchange or getting actually wrecked because you
Yeah.
asked a dumb question or things like that, and they don't think that way. And
That's why I mean right now I don't know what is the median age and like I'd say the leadership in the Senate or Congress, it's huge. I mean it's like
I
what,
mean,
70 some plus,
I
right?
think it's like
And
70.
that is, I mean it is a different world that they're living in their minds, right?
Yeah.
It's like the other day I was watching something about Seinfeld, right? Seinfeld is complaining about comedy has disappeared. It used to be, he said, it used to be you go to TV and so you have your happy days and you have your, what you call it. You have All in the Family. These are sitcoms, right? You have your Cheers and on a Thursday night. And he's saying, so comedy has disappeared because that model that has, but no, there's plenty of comedy out there. You can find new comedy. You go to, it's huge. In fact, it's much better than it used to be, right?
Huh?
But for him, because this guy's 70, right? He still lives in that world, the world of networks and sitcoms in that way. And you sit down with your family and you watch. No, we're different. And so if we have leaders who are like that, living in a different, galaxy, right? How are they going to be creative, innovative in a way that sort of leverages the agility that you're saying, that exists now? That's part of the ethos right now. It's, you go figure it out. You have a million
Well,
ways of doing things.
I think that goes back to exactly kind of what I was saying initially is, you're elected to, Congress, what do you do? And the first thing I said is, put together, after hiring is put together my staff and get different perspectives and get, and that, the current elected officials could absolutely get different perspectives, but, take Mr. With comedy, death comedy, if he actually not just, talk to people every once in a while, but actually surrounded himself with diverse opinions and perspectives,
Yeah, he
he
wouldn't
would
be.
know
Yeah,
comedians like Taylor Tomlinson,
yeah,
who just got, After Midnight show. She's hysterical.
yeah.
She became popular on TikTok. And it's, you know, being old and sorry, being a senior in Congress and things isn't necessarily bad, but the
No,
problem is
but
they're
the bubble,
supporting themselves in their own bubble, and you
it's the
have to
bubble
broaden
hard.
your horizons. You have to get in different perspectives and people from different walks of life so that you can see, if the, they, when they were complaining about, death of comedy, well, if they had hired someone who sees the world from a different lens, even though they're limited here, but if you have people on all these other different perspectives,
Yeah,
your perspective, you will see the world in a different light. But you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone and be around
yeah,
people who don't necessarily agree with you 100% of the time in
yeah.
order to get that viewpoint. And they they don't. They just choose to be in their own bubble, and then are shocked when they don't, when there's a lot of people who disagree with them.
Yeah, when I was so Dunbar is in the bubble, and then hopefully we'll either get him out of his bubble so that he can, so that he debates you guys, right? By
He's
just
either gonna get out of his bubble or, buyer GPT.
yeah,
He'll just be spitting facts. We're gonna have a nice little audit trail, and
oh
uh,
yeah,
he's a
that's
big
right.
leader on AI, so I guess he's gonna have to support it.
I
If
mean, if you're a leader, if you're a leader, then you should be a pro technology like this. So hopefully, I think this will garner some national attention. To be honest with you,
hopefully,
because
yeah,
it will. So be ready. They will probably ask you, since you're sort of leading
I'll
this.
be.
They'll
It's
ask they'll ask you to the following, I think, because I was talking to my to one of these candidates. They'll ask you, so what are you gonna do Trump GPT? Because Trump doesn't want
I'm
to do.
open sourcing it again. Like I said, I'm now. A caveat to this: I'm currently working with the Federal Election Commission to figure out, is it legal for code written by a federally controlled campaign to be used by another federal campaign, even if it's open source. Open source is a well-established legal precedent like Drupal and stuff, but that was written by,
Why would it be? Because it's a
well,
federal campaign?
campaign money went
Mm,
into money or resources, talent went into writing this code.
okay,
And if normally open source, it's not a problem. You can use, if campaigns couldn't use open source, you couldn't even have email.
exactly.
And but the question that no one's ever asked, and campaigns haven't really released, they were like, is this personal use? Why would you release code open source? How is that helping you get elected? I'm like, because it's the right thing to do. It's like,
So
you know,
I want to do it. So that's yeah.
it's an internal, it's the same as like, not considering race and hiring in position. That's the way I see open source. You are open source as a policy. But that's one question the FEC asked me initially, but now I'm trying to get an answer, but it's a complicated question that they're trying to work through is, um, can another campaign legally use code written by my campaign? Because does that count as an in-kind contribution?
What if you? But what if you? Oh, can they? Without asking, or if they ask you, they
Well,
can't.
it's open, so anyone can use it. I have no input whatsoever if someone uses my code or not with
So
the
what I'm
license.
asking is, can they come back and say, okay, here's what we determined. If a campaign wants to use your code, that campaign has to ask you for permission, and if you give them
That
permission,
would be, again, I'm a huge open source licensing. It would cause like the I can't really control the dissemination of the code, but the question is, uh, does like if Harris or the Trump campaign, let's say like this code, if Bio GPT or candidate GPT, someone else wanted to spin this up, another campaign wanted to spin up against the gut person themselves or someone they're running against. The question is, does that campaign have to report that as my campaign, Hensel for Congress, as an in-kind contribution to like, Harris for president or Trump for president? Is that an in-kind or not? Which that's a niche like technologist question.
but what you could do though, what you could do is the following. So you could spin up a server, I don't know, either AWS or whatever it may be, and people can and have a UI where people can go and ask questions of Don
Yeah,
by, right? You could do that. And you could also do the same thing with Trump. So
Oh
people
yeah,
on,
no, I'll be forking this repo onto my again, I encourage Hensel Comics on GitHub, but my GitHub username is the Bodie McBoatface. And it is oh yeah, no, I'm big. I love using that username with official clients when I get added to GitHub repos.
in
Uh,
React
but
too.
I will be forking my own code and creating a copy of it and then putting up other candidates and then that is on my own personal time and spinning that up on my own I call it the Beltway Cloud, which is my I actually started a little company to manage my home lab because I've got so much stuff running on it.
I see.
But other campaigns, I'll just drop in their data and their policies and then probably use Cloudflare AI workers because they're cheaper and do those responses there so other people can ask. But my hope with like this, V1 is to really like you said, and number one, get buyer to show up because we're gonna put the fear into him that oh my gosh, buyer GPT, which everything will be open source, so you can see why it'll make the decision, is going to
Yeah.
respond on your behalf.
Well, right
But
now he's on the record having said no. Okay.
yeah, no, he's not going to show up. I'm willing to bet
No, what I'm saying is the following. I'm saying he is now on the record having said no to an invitation.
yeah.
If you guys go and say, Don, just so that you know, right? If you don't show up for the next debate, we're gonna have Don bot, right? And then he shows up. So there is a story here, right?
Well,
Which is the guy was pushed into because he reluctantly he does not want to participate, but he sort of cowed into this, and so it just plays into how the guy does not want to debate unless forced to, right?
so one thing, and this is a bigger question for we've been very, I think, as you've seen on the screens, like deliberate with campaigns. Like there are some things that at least I've said like I can have input on, and then there's other things like the moderators and stuff. I can't give an opinion on that. But one thing I'd like to do is even if he does show up,
Yeah,
again, fork the code and do Bentley GPT, do David GPT, do
yeah,
Forest GPT, and then have an overlay of text when that candidate is speaking of the candidate GPT saying the same response. And it might be the same, it might be different, but superimpose the text on the screen and just see the alignment or disalignment. I
yeah,
have no idea what the great algorithm in this guy is going to come up with that. But
yeah,
um, I think from that, that also, again, I hate to use the Fox News phrase here, but it's like that's kind of fair and balanced. Everyone's getting the same interpretation, same data. But I think like, to your bigger point of like democracy and humanity and things like, I feel this is a great use case of technology kind of potentially leveling the playing field. Again, I do not have 1.2 million or something like that in the bank like Mr. Buyer, but I feel, and Mr. Kennedy's we're the same way. There are moments and there are things like ARC was elected because of YouTube video, and I feel that being the age and the time that we're in, the same old like perspectives, policies, and strategies, especially like in campaigning, that doesn't hold true necessarily anymore. But and if you're willing to kind of, I feel, go out on a limb a little bit and take your Saturday when you're working on your shelves, but also writing a whole bunch of Python and Rust to get candidate GPT spun up and things. At least I hope. It's kind of like my hope in the internet. The internet will find a way. And I guess my bigger goal is if we go out and actually like put ourselves out there, do the work, and have some hope for the future. Maybe we can be a little bit more proud of the US as opposed to apologizing for it.
yeah. Well, the thing is, I think, is so you're young. I think you have plenty of opportunity to build, right? So I think you're right now you're building the foundation. You have a message, you have a passion. I think If you don't make it this time, if you need to think about 2026, 2 years is a long time to build a message and hold
If
on. If you just focus on that, because I think the future is these guys are, they need to transition out, these 70 plus people and 80 plus, they need to, and if people like you are going to come in, and right now I think you're a front runner for the new generation, if you look at it that way. I mean, why would somebody, I mean, why would, if you care about this, you care about this district and you've been working for the last, I don't know, 4 years, and just there you understand and you visited and all that, there'll be name recognition and so on. The only thing that is bothersome is the fact that there is these labels, D and R. And if you, for example, if there was a primary open, an open primary for Democrats, because this guy's retiring, let's say, I think you'd have a shot, because then, and as soon as you can win by 1%, in primary.
whoever gets the Democratic nomination is pretty much a shoo-in for Northern.
Exactly.
And
So you could have 20
for
people. You could have 20, I'm just thinking about, like, imagining the future. You'd have like 15 people running in the primary, right? Because this guy finally is out, and then you, because you've been there, your voice and you're in. If you win, that's it. You're in Congress. If you by 1%, you could get 15% because everybody else is scattered. So my point really is that um, none of this is for naught, and none of
if
this is
I
wasted. Yeah.
don't win in November, which again, I'm a data guy. I'm well aware, and the media has been very clear in making sure that I am well aware of my chance. I was so shocked. Oh my gosh. I had no idea. I thought I was a shoe-in for the past 6 months building the foundation of the campaign.
Right.
Thank you, reporters, for reminding me of my chances. I really appreciate it. But
That was
you
the
know,
only thing. Yeah.
like I said, win or lose, I'm going to the woods for a couple days after those two
That's good for you.
decompress. But I've
But
made
my
it.
my point is, I think the
I'm
long
not
game,
gonna stop because
long game is it. Yeah.
I've already done more, which is honestly a little depressing. I've done more already in my campaign for campaign finance transparency than they've done in decades, which is really sad, actually. So,
Yeah.
if Mr. Breyer wins in November, I'm gonna take a couple days to just rest and recuperate. But House elections are every 2 years, and it
Yeah.
took me 5, 6 months, honestly, to get the foundation built for this campaign, get on the ballot and get all of that. And it's hard, especially when you don't have a huge coalition and when you're building an MID from scratch. And if November doesn't go my way, and I'm not absolutely, if I don't get like any votes, I might reconsider that. But if I think after this, especially as a finalist in these policies, I'm like, wow, this is something that people care about. People actually like a lot of some of the things I'm talking about. And the biggest problem is people don't know about it yet. And it takes time, like you said, to build that name ID.
The
So
name ID. Yeah.
I'm not gonna, the primary is, if I've got a year, pretty much what, 15 months to build that kind of coalition, it's going to be hard to. I think if Mr. Breyer actually has an election, he's going to lose. But he hasn't had a real election. He's never really been challenged.
Yeah.
And
That's true. That's true. He doesn't have the muscles to fight back. Yeah.
no, he doesn't. And again, I admire, he's a nice guy, but I've in my professional life, I've been through and I've led and I've done the knife fights. I've done the hard campaigns, and um, the biggest challenge I'm facing now is I'm starting to bring in and get some more people interested in donors and everything, but I did not have that for the majority of my time here. And so, if it doesn't work out in November, I feel that these issues and these ideas are too important to just let go. And so I'm,
Yeah, right now you're gonna start from a much easier place than, because you have all that knowledge and all that experience that you.
yeah, you don't have to completely start from scratch.
Exactly, yeah. So you'll move
And
faster and yeah. And then I think because you started getting covered about your push there, I think that could be the kernel of your future image, right? So
yeah,
this is the guy, right? And if
It's
you connect with the media, like when they need to talk about transparency, they go to you because they're lazy. You know, once they have you in their roster, trust me,
yeah,
they'll go back to you, right?
I
And then
admit,
all of a sudden you're the you know, and all of a sudden you appear on C-SPAN, right? You
yeah,
know, because you're the guy, because
yeah.
you know your shit, right? I'm sorry, you know your stuff. And so if you look at it that way, like build the brand. So do and the Bentley, that's a great name, Bentley, right? Bentley. They can people remember it, right? I think then you all of a sudden you have a chance if this guy is not gonna last forever.
No, and
So
but
so
yeah, no,
I'm
that's
very
not my
happy.
plan. I don't want to. I yeah, like I said earlier, I've been compared to like an Energizer bunny. I don't really know uh how, I like I said, I love fixing solving problems. So the best way to get me motivated to do something or accomplish something is say no, or that's not possible. Like that, say, oh no, you can't fix the government
Well,
acquisition.
that's what people are saying about campaign finance reform. Say it's hopeless, right?
Oh,
So
I've done it. I'm literally the first
there
person
you
to
go.
instantly disclose. It's not hard. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, no one ever told me that, they've said, no, you can't do it. Well, why not? Why can't we rebuild the federal government and actually use quality technology? It's just too hard. Why? Are you just not motivated? Like, it's not, we can't fix Social Security. Just lift the payroll contribution cap above $160,000 you payroll. So, because, Social Security is an investment in America. It's it's an investment in America's future, not your future. We did that. Social Security's fixed. It doesn't go bankrupt. It's one thing.
Yeah. No,
And
it's true.
but
It's true.
people, and I'm just either some people call it, perseverance, other people call it idiocracy, or naivete. But I'm like, I don't really know how to quit or like give up when based off just adversity. And even if it doesn't work out for me in November, um, this is something I've, especially the past few months, come to truly care about. And even as my campaign has been compared to a kamikaze mission by a other reporter, which that stung. It, I feel that I've already brought some attention to some critical issues and potential solutions.
Yeah.
And even if that does cause a bunch of even if running for Congress is a huge emotional, physical burden and a whole bunch of stuff to go through. I care about actually fixing it, and I'm willing to kind of do that. So to your point, if it doesn't work out in November, I'm gonna take a few days to
Prelude. I look at
still
it
come
as
back because I
it'll
care
be
about this stuff too much.
it will be a prelude to the next step. Um,
Yeah.
Bentley Hensel, I have gone a whole hour. You've been so generous, and I apologize for being
No,
on Saturday.
yeah, like I said, this was a
But
great, my day to
so
day
thankful.
is finishing up Don Bot and I like the tape on the
Yeah,
back
I
and then
like that. I like it.
putting
That's
up some
your
shelves today. So
okay. Well, that sounds like a more fun than continuing to talk about this stuff. But I tell you what, thank you so much. Thank you
thank
so much.
you.
I look forward to Downbot. I think the nation will be introduced to Downbot soon, and I think that's going to make some waves in a good way across the.
Yeah, no, well, it's made some good ways, but they're gonna be, I am as it's gonna be so much fun just to see the angry comments about that. I am
Right?
thoroughly excited for the comment
I'm looking
sections.
forward to it. I'm looking forward
Yes,
to it. All right, Bentley. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to Humanity 8.0 with your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo.